If you watched last week's video, you know that I made this character. In this week's video, I'm going to mold him using 3 different casting strategies. The head is I'm going to make a rotational mold, and he'll be rotocast. These pieces are going to be molded and cast using a one-piece cut mold. And all of these pieces will be open back molds. 3 separate molds, 3 separate strategies. Let's get started. In order to make these molds, some preparations are required. The first is I'm going to make a shaped mold case. And the reason I'm making a shape molding box for this is I don't want to waste a lot of rubber. The spout's going to be right here, and we're going to have to fabricate that as well. But that looks like a mold case to me. Okay, so that's prep work on that. We're going to cut that out, which we'll do in a second. These open back pieces are just going to be attached flat, and they're going to be molded just in this little box. Each one of these pieces has been sanded flat, so it has a nice flat back to fit on the plywood. And the other little bit of prep is we have a problem with holes. You can have holes, well you can, but holes can be problematic. That hole becomes a long, flimsy cylinder of rubber sticking out of the mold. And the way we're going to solve the hole problem is we're going to fill them with wax. They don't have to fill in solid, you just have to seal them up. So we fill up the holes very nicely. You just have to fill it up so that rubber can't get in there. Okay, now we need the armholes on the figure. Same way. All right, those are all full. And now all we have to do is just kind of smooth them out a little bit so they don't show. All right, prep work done. Let's get ready to make the molds. So I cut that shape that I just drew out on the bandsaw. And now the next step is we got to beeswax this stuff up. Because silicone rubber might stick to wood. Shouldn't, but it might. It's far better to put a sealant of beeswax on it. We're going to use this box, by the way, as the sides for our mold container. That's why I'm coating it with beeswax, again, so that the silicone rubber maybe won't stick to the cardboard. Now that we have the box waxed, we can just go ahead and cut it. And we'll just cut it up. 2 size. Okay, so this is going to be the bottom edge of one of our boxes. Okay. You notice that I'm cutting through the paper. Oh well, won't hurt it. Won't really hurt the desktop either, frankly. Okay. And we're just going to guesstimate here. The way I'm gluing this thing together is with sticky wax, which is this stuff. And I hope, am putting enough wax in there to get that to bond on there. We shall see. And then the last piece will fit in there like that. And with luck, the whole thing will hold together. We'll know soon enough. That should work. All right, let me finish this up and we'll move on to the next step. So the next bit of preparation required to make this mold is we need to put a funnel on this guy. So we're going to use 1/8 inch wire. And let's just go ahead and cut it off about, I don't know, let's say about like that. All right. Boy, talk about lucky guesswork on that, huh? Woo-hoo. Okay, so there's your spout. Now this is going to serve as a spout for pouring in the resin. But more importantly than that, it's also going to serve as the plug that we're going to use when we rotate the thing. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get there, so nobody panic. All right, very good. The next step is going to be sticking these pieces to the wood. Here we go. And I'm just going to hit them with a little glob of sticky wax and position them into place. Make sure they are stuck down good. That's all there is to that. And the reason that I'm putting them so close together is because I want this box to be as small as possible and use the least amount of rubber as possible. Rubber is expensive. We don't want to waste it. Nice. They're all stuck on. Now, all we need to do is put the sides on the box, which I pre-cut out of the same paper I used for the rotation mold. I made for this. We're going to tape that all up. And voila. Instant little mold box ready to go. These two are next. And this is going to be a cut mold, one-piece cut mold. And so we'll be casting both of these in the same mold at the same time using this as our handy-dandy pour funnel. I'll show you what I mean as we do this job. I began making this mold by drilling a hole in the heart. There's a hole in my heart. Okay, never mind that. And we're going to hook the heart together with our happy aluminum wire. Don't need much. Let's see, how far does this go in? Not very far. And it's not going to go very far in there either. So let's call that like that. See what happens. And if it's too long, we will shorten it. I'm going to call that too long. But you know what I could do too? I'll show you something else I could do before I go too nuts. I'm going to call that a little bit too long, not crazy too long. But I also want to bend it a little. I'm not using the force of this plastic to bend. I use my fingers, otherwise you could have cracked that and that would have been a mess and I'd have been sad. I bent it so that it looks like that. I could bend it even a tiny bit more. Just bend this thing just a tiny bit more. That. So you can see it's got a nice bend in it. Let's see if I overbent it. It's very likely. Put that in there like that. Put this in here like that. Come on, go in. There you. Nice. That's pretty much exactly what I was looking for. Now you go, well, all right, now what? Now, of course, goes without saying, the next step is what it always is, sticky wax. What would we do in this world without our sticky wax? And I'm going to seal that up on top there. Bring that together. Beauteous. More sticky wax. And here, into the hole, into the heart. Put those two together. Like that. Very nice. Now what we've done, we've created a channel for the wax to run into the heart. I'd like this sprue that we've made to be a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier. 1/8 of an inch is okay, but a little bit bigger and a little bit more hooked together will cause the resin to flow in a lot faster. And it'll let us fill the mold more rapidly. So I'm just going to build it up a little. Now, we've got a channel. Goes like this. We're going to pour this way because it's going to hang upside down in the mold. But you got to get the air out. And that is where our handy-dandy sprue wax comes into play. So we attach that to the highest point, which is right there. Down here, where it joins the heart, we can afford to make a tight joint right here. We'll weld that, really weld that on there well, so that the air will rise up out of the highest part of the mold, which is the tip of the heart. Normally that would be the bottom of the heart, but hanging upside down in the mold, it's the top of the heart, and it's where the air is going to rise out. We don't want to make too huge a connection right here, however, and that's because that's going to have to be cleaned up because this is doing double duty. This is the body of our guy, but it's also the pour cup. So, oh, I'm so clever, so efficient with my working processes. Nice. Okay, now that you have that done, it's going to wind up in this cup, like that. Oh my goodness, it just fits right in there, don't it? All right, perfect. So, once again, back to the ever popular sticky wax. Again, you don't need a huge amount. It'll stick, don't worry. Like that. And now I would say that we are very close to having 3 pieces. Here, let's slide all this out of the way and recap, shall we? So there's your one, this is going to be what's called a one-piece cut mold. This is an open back mold. And this is our handy-dandy rotation mold. And we're going to rotocast this on the rotocasting machine. So this is going to be hollow. And the reason this is going to be, why am I going through all this trouble to make this hollow? Because this stuff, Magic Sculpt, this is pretty hefty. It's heavy. I mean, it's like a rock. And for a sculpture, it wouldn't really matter. But for a puppet, like a posable puppet, this head is a lot of mass to balance on the little dinky body. So it'd be really handy if this was lightweight, super lightweight, hollow casting. And that's why we're doing it. Let's get to it and pour some rubber. Now that that mold is poured so that the bottom sides are carefully filled, we can go ahead and just top it off. And that goes pretty fast. We don't have to be quite as careful because now there's no place to trap air. And now all we have to do is finish filling the box and pour in just enough rubber to coat the nose. And while I have some rubber left over from this last batch, I'm going to use it to put about 1/8 of an inch of rubber in the bottom of the rotation mold. I didn't get it on camera, but what I did was I cut some sticks of rubber from old molds and propped the Magic Sculpt Master up about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom. So there's an air gap underneath the model and between that layer of still wet rubber. So what I want to do now is I'm going to pour the rubber only from one side in one spot. And what will happen is the rubber is going to run down in there. It's fluid enough that it will just flow out from that spot where I'm pouring and push the air out in front of it like a wave. And it should just remove all of the air from underneath it. You can kind of see little bubbles coming up on the side, but you can also see that the rubber is rising all around in an even ring around the model. And that means that the air has been pushed out and we will get a really good casting. Otherwise, you may trap bubbles. Now, what happens if we do trap bubbles? Well, not a hell of a lot, really. It's just that much more work to clean up each casting, fill bubbles, patch them, sand them, that kind of stuff. The better casting you make, the less work you do later. That's kind of the golden rule of doing this stuff. That's why we work hard to make the best possible mold. All right, I mixed up another batch of rubber. I've done this pour in several batches. You take 10 parts of the liquid rubber and you mix it with 1 part of the hardener. So for instance, this was 180 grams of the rubber and plus 18 grams of hardener brings you to 198. So, you don't have to be that accurate. So it went around 200 grams total. Be just fine. As always, I'm going to pour from the bottom up for the same reason I did on the other pieces. I want the air to rise above and away from the model. I want the rubber to push the air out of the way. When you do it that way, you really do get bubble-free castings. You can see it's pretty full. You just need to be on top. You don't have to pour a lot of extra. Now we're going to see if we have enough, which we probably don't. We're going to have to mix up more. now let's go ahead and fill this mold. Question. Am I going to have enough to fill this mold? Or am I going to come up a little short? Depends on how much I can scrape out of the cup, right? Can we get enough to fill the mold? That's the question. We are so close to filling this thing. That's about all I can reasonably expect to get out of the cup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little tiny bit. And how I'm going to cheat is just going to move this down, just going to prop it up with a little bit of rubber. There's a lot more rubber at the head end than there is at the tail end. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit thin there, although I think it's going to fill out okay. And by propping it up 1/4 of an inch, I've got it about 1/4 of an inch off the table. By propping it up just that much, I think we're going to see if the rubber is going to run down far enough to make that work out. I think we're going to be really, really, really close to doing it because the rubber continues to sag down towards that end. And I think I only have about a 1/16 more inch to rise. And the shape, the form is completely covered. So I think, by God, I estimated it with my customary absolutely flawless precision. He says, laughing. Yep, look at that. Okay, now let's see if that overflows with time. I'll take a look at it in a minute. There's our beautiful 3 perfectly filled molds. Looking good. I think they came out good. I hope so. We'll know tomorrow. We're going to let them cure overnight, as usual, 24 hours. And tomorrow morning, we're going to cut these kids open, see what they look like. And with any luck, we'll be making some nice castings tomorrow. All right, let's cut some molds. Let's see, which one do we want to do first? Let's do the simplest one first. The open back. Let's pull the tape off. And away we go. I will definitely be doing some trimming. You'll get about a flash around the edges of open back parts, like these shoes, same thing. So there will be some trimming and cleanup. None of that's going to matter to the castings. Castings are going to be just fine. And as you can see, the parts clean up just fine. They're just pretty much completely unaffected by their immersion in the rubber. No worries at all. Mold number 2, the one-piece cut mold. Let's just get the cup taken off first. Plastic loves rubber, so no problem. Now, got to cut this open, and in order to do that, well, first thing we want to do is find the vent where the air comes out, which is that blue, if you'll remember, that blue wax rod we put on there, and it is right there. See that? That's where we want to cut. So here we go. Let us cut. Now you want to make a very jagged cut. You would think that you would want to make a really clean, perfect cut. Oh no, that's not what you want to do. You want to make a really jagged cut so that when you put the mold halves back together again, the two sides interlock with one another because they're so jagged and rough. See how I'm going back and forth and making a sawtooth-like pattern? See how nice and rough that is? And see how they lock back together again? Ta-da! That's why you do it. See how they lock back together? That's counterintuitive to how you would think you would want to make a mold. And it's one of the things you have to learn about making molds. That's the trick. Now, I've got to cut down far enough to get past the connection between the body and the heart, and I just did that. So now you can see the top of the heart, and you can see how it connects to the body. Hope you can see that in there. Bring that up. See that? It's kind of like a surgery, actually. Okay. Now, the trick here is we want to cut as little as possible, but still release the parts. So, in order to achieve that goal, we're going to cut the top part out down to the sprue. Okay, I think that's enough to get the heart out. Yeah, came right out. Perfect. And you see the rough halves of the mold? They just come back together, and that just makes an almost invisible parting line. No cleanup. That is going to make nice, tight castings. All right, 2 for 2. The rotation mold is by far the most interesting one, and the one that's going to require the most work, because not only do I have to cut this mold free, I've got to mount it to a rotating machine. And in order to do that, I'm going to have a cradle. Meantime, we have to cut this thing open. Again with the jagged cut. So I'm right at the part. See it? I don't know if you can, again, can you see it right in there? See there? There's our part. Let's just cut it open. Just pulled the funnel out. Now, we're going to need this funnel again. This we're going to cram back in the mold every time we make a casting as our stopper. But you can see things are going well. This mold has a good shape because it's very wide and big at the base, which means, I hope, we're not going to have to cut too much along the sides. But this rubber has a high modulus of elongation, so ta-da! There he is. Hey, pretty clean, pretty clean. Let's design and fabricate a cradle. I made a little rotator just for small parts like this. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to make the cradle. We're going to attach this, the rubber mold, to this inner frame so we can spin it in space. There's my basic piece of wood. So this is going to sit on there like that. Now the thing is, if you put it on here like that, it's ridiculously out of balance. That's not what you want. So what you want is you want it more like this. So I need a couple of 5-inch pieces of this. Let me go cut that. All right, I got them cut, and now we just need to put them on with some 5-minute epoxy. No worries, easy peasy. Then the mold will sit right in there, and the whole thing will attach to the frame with 4 screws. All right, like this. Looking straight down at it, you can't really see it, but it's more centered in the cradle, and that's going to give it a much better balance. I'm going to cut this on the jigsaw, these shapes, and these are just going to be like tabs that the rubber bands are going to wrap around. Eventually, this piece will fit like that, and it'll be all held together with rubber bands wrapping around. Beautiful. All right, let's go cut them on the jigsaw. What I have done is broken out the rubber bands. I'm very curious as to how this is going to all fit together. So let's pull out some rubber bands and see what we get. Let's see how this is going to work. Put that on there like that. Okay. Then the concept here is take a rubber band, pull it over, and go like that. Then over here, just because we have to be colorful and flashy, take another colored rubber band, go over here like that. Holy moly! Look at that. It's almost like I know what I'm doing, huh? I amaze myself. myself. And then we'll let that yellow rubber band, make sure that that plug doesn't fall out. Something like that. But that is just going to spin that thing like a crazy man. And now all we have to do is take 4 little screws and attach that to that, and we are done and ready to go. Boop, boop. Okay, that's in place. Let's get this one in place. I think these 2 holes are lined up pretty good. All right, now we're in business. Now if this thing shifts around, to be honest, probably 2 of them would have held it. This is such a small object. All right, we're almost ready to go. And while we're on the theme of rubber bands, let's put the rubber bands on the cut mold. Those are way too big. So what do? I used to have a collection of rubber bands of all different sizes until I woke up one day and said, I'm an idiot. All you need to do is make your rubber band fit your mold. Could not be simpler than that. Just tie a little knot in it, and you can custom make a rubber band to fit pretty much any size of mold, including you can tie rubber bands together for big molds. Okay, so 3 is going to be enough. As you can see, you cannot see the parting line on that mold. Well, you can if you really get out your scanning electron microscope eyeballs. You can see it, but that's a nice clean parting line. We're going to have very little cleanup on those parts. It's time to mix some resin and pour some resin. Let's get on with that project. No time like the present, as you can see. This will be a nice dark pink when it sets up, probably. So let's mix it up good. Since we already did the first set over here, we know how much we're going to need. So where's the vent? Pour the big ones first. That way you can dump out a lot of the material. Or from the biggest to the smallest. You have more control over the small castings when you have less resin in the cup. When you're pouring an open back mold, you can always take a stick and just kind of scrape it. Like that. Let's slide these into the tank. This pressure pot will crush out all of the bubbles, and that's why we love it. Up the air in. And we're golden. Okay, I think it's been about 20 minutes. Let's see what our witness cup tells us. See how hard that is? That's why we love witness cups, because this cup is telling us what's going on with the castings in this tank. Don't have to guess. Just the way I like it. Let the air out. Let us see what we have. Oh yeah, very pink. Very, very pink. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to take this off so you can see it without moving the camera. I'll open this thing up. There you go. Very nice. Looking good. Oh yeah, that's nice. That is very nice. So, good castings coming out perfect, as to be expected. See some of these. Let's look at his little pants part. There's the little pants part. Also looking really good. Here's the nose. Get the nose out. Oh yeah. Nice. Oh yeah. You can cast all of these things in solid colors if you wanted to and not even have to paint. Could do it that way. I'll peel the rest of these out and we'll keep going. All right, we're going to make rotation number 1. See what happens. But I'm stirring up resin. I think I have way more resin than I need. So let's get this thing put down and poured in place. Down the hatch it went. Let's get this thing in place. Got to kind of struggle to get the cap in, but it'll go. And indeed it did go. Nice. Okay, that's going to hold. I'll put the yellow rubber band on there just to make sure, but I think it's going to hold. Let's spin. Spinning, spinning. All right, this thing is spinning like a champion. And you just keep this, what you want when you spin is you want full random motion. Spin it, spin it. I made this rotator yesterday, I think. And it just is very simple. Made it out of scrap wood and 4 screws. I couldn't be more pleased by how well this works. It's still quite liquidy in the cup. But I think it's gelling. Is it getting warm? Yeah, it's getting warm. So it's starting to gel, so we definitely want to keep it rotating. It's definitely starting to gel up. We don't want it to stop. We don't want to let it rest. We just want to keep it moving. All different directions, forwards, backwards, upside down. Just keep it moving. And then the cup will tell us when we can stop spinning. Oh yeah, starting to gel in the cup. All right, excitement time. Let's see. Oh yeah, yes indeedy, it's hard. It's ready to pull. Guess we'll just pop off the rubber bands and free our little boy. There we go. Easy peasy. Let's see what the cap looks like. Nice, okay. It's looking good. That's sealed up okay. I put some release agent on this cap because urethane will stick to urethane. So, but not with release agent on it, it won't. Pull this boy apart. Ooh, looking good so far. Looking good so far. Now I didn't cut it down very far, so I'm gonna peel it off this way. Just using the stretch of the mold. Oh yeah. Really good and light, much lighter. Now I think I could cast it even lighter than that. I cast a 60 gram batch. I think I could cast a 45 maybe. But that's a significant improvement over the 135 grams that the Magic Sculpt original weighed. So not bad. Always some slight mold cleanup, but really pretty clean. Looks good, very pleased. Here's our project. As you can see, I made a bunch of them in different colors. We started with the originals in the Gray Magic Sculpt, and then we just cast up all the different pieces in different colors. I would argue that I've made more of my living as a mold maker, because almost every project I've ever done has involved making copies of the original sculpt, or the original sculpt was made in a fragile media like wax or clay. And then the final version of the piece had to be made in some durable material like resin. And that's been true of commercial jobs as well as gallery and fine artwork. So I strongly recommend you learn mold making and casting. It's a lot of fun and it greatly extends what you can do in your shop. Next week, we're going to assemble and paint one of these characters, and that should be a lot of fun. See you in the next video.